kick off with a personal story to set the context for my talk. I left Ghana for my graduate studies in the year 2000. At the time, my mom, who is not the most tech-savvy person by her own admission, had never owned a cell phone. This was the year 2000. Fast forward 2 to 3 years later, one afternoon as I was walking to class, I heard the familiar buzz of my cell phone. When I looked at my screen, I was shocked to see that I had received a text message from none other than my mom. I had to confirm with my nieces that my mom had actually typed and sent the message. Well, it turns out that she did, with the help of, a help sheet, a kind of function keys, A or B or sheet. Fast forward 17 years later, she's now 82 years old. These days, she regularly Skypes with her grandchildren. And of course, she's WhatsApping 24/7. Not only that, she's also an expert in changing profile pictures. However, the icing on the cake was when I recently called to ask how her hospital visit went. I was actually driving to work. Went well, she said. I Googled my ailment beforehand. And everything the doctor said was correct. That is how far we have come thanks to technology. I set the stage for today's lecture with this story to demonstrate how technology can have a profound impact on our core lifestyles. Furthermore, breaking down the technological aspects of this story will reveal a finely woven, multi-billion-dollar trail of science and technology. The technologies at play are many. Mobile phone processors, semiconductor memory, display technology, GPS, communication technology, software and search algorithms. Each of these represents billion-dollar industries that are contributing massively to the GDPs of entire national economies. My opening submission is that we, Ghana, can have a piece of this technology pie that the rest of the world is enjoying. It is possible. I have good news and bad news. The good news is that most of what I will present today is not new and has come up in one form or another in national discussions. The bad news is that the only lesson we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said at the inauguration of the University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, and I see Dr. Kibi Asante here, I'm sure you might have been the secretary then, on November 29th, 1961, and I quote, "Modern life," I can't do the Kwame Nkrumah impression, but I'll do my best. "Modern life has become so complex that we can no longer rely on the stone implements and simple tools which were adequate for the needs of our ancestors. In a sense, we must move swiftly from the Stone Age to the age of the atom. What it has taken other peoples and nations centuries to achieve, we have to carry out in a decade or generation," unquote. This statement made in 1961 by our first president 4 years after independence in 1957 serves as a measuring stick by which we may assess how far we have advanced, and even more importantly, what we need to do going forward. To undertake this analysis, and here comes the science, I selected a proven model for situational awareness analysis. It is called the OODA loop. Don't be scared. OODA loop. And OODA is an acronym, O-O-D-A. O for observe, orient, decide, and act. Observe, orient, decide, and act. As the pilot will say, Oscar, Oscar, Delta, Alpha, I believe. It is a logical and applied approach to understanding, assessing, projecting, and making recommendations about a situation or a system. It's often applied at the strategic level in military operations and for situational awareness analysis. It's very appropriate for our current discourse because it will allow us to delve into both the depth and the breadth of the issue as far as time will allow us. So with your indulgence, I'll move to the very first step, the observe step. The first step is the process of acquiring information about the system. We will look at the relevant background information, prior and current, about the state of science and technology in Ghana. A focal point for any discussion on science and technology in Ghana has to be the nation's universities. And here again, I see some of our past vice chancellors here, Professor Dimensa, Professor Kilaka Sawyer. In his inauguration speech at the University of Science and Technology, Dr. Nkrumah spelled out clear mandates for the university. This included, and I've just added a few, investigate and research problems surrounding industrialization and agricultural development. Explore alternative sources of energy, such as atomic reactors and solar energy. Develop revolutionary methods of transport and modern communication networks. In terms of producing scientists and engineers, to support these areas listed, our universities have made great strides. However, there is a glaring gap between research or the research that's produced and its broader impacts and application to the practical problems that our nation faces. A lot of good scientific work has come out of our universities, but one will struggle to name a defining technology or innovation attributable to these institutions. This is a good juncture to acknowledge the pioneering roles and contributions of great Ghanaian scientists and innovators. We have such an illustrious list. I didn't know where to start or where to end, but with your indulgence, I'll mention names like Professors Alote, Felix Kolote-Ahulu, our own chairman for today, Nina Kukweno, Professor Adai Mensah, Dr. Primpong Boateng, our current Minister of Science and Technology, Avik Luche, a renowned NASA scientist, and being Mother's Week, I might not leave out female scientists as well, Dr. Esther Oklu, Professor Irama Adi, and Eva Loko of blessed memory. As we continue the task of observing the system, let's transition from observing the past to observing information that is more present. The other baseline I selected for analysis. So a basic review of this manifesto reveals that both parties agree on at least one objective, and that is the 60-40 admission ratio of science to humanities. I bet that probably might be the easiest option for both of them. My thoughts and observations from the manifesto analysis are as follows. Both manifestos appear laudable, but as with most goals in life, the proof is in the execution and follow-through. Juxtaposing the goals of Dr. Nkrumah and the state of affairs portrayed in the manifestos paints a picture of an athlete running hard, but in place. The achievements and objectives do not represent tangible inroads since independence. Otherwise, we wouldn't be making statements like gradually moving towards and achieving 1.5% of GDP in probably 4 years. There's also a glaring neglect of a wide array of sectors like information technology, healthcare, aviation, and transportation in general. So that wraps up the observe step of the UDA methodology. So remember, observe, orient, decide, and act. Continuing with the UDA methodology, the orient step involves analysis and synthesis of information, but more importantly, contextualization. How does our approach to science and technology in terms of prioritization, agency, and cultural traditions compare with the rest of the world? I've summarized my analysis in 3 points. And the first point that I'll make is, I've titled that, lack of innovative, curiosity-driven culture. Lack of an innovative, curiosity-driven culture. In one of the most famous anecdotes in the history of science, a young Sir Isaac Newton is sitting in a garden when an apple falls from a tree, and his curiosity leads him to come up with a theory of gravity. I believe most of us studied Newton's laws of motion and Nelson and Parker and Abbott's days. This was in the year 1666. One man's curiosity can change humanity. The giant strides that have been made in terms of science and technology since then point to the continuous quest for improvement by humanity, and in particular by technologically advanced economies. And I've listed some examples here. In communication technology, from the age of the rotary phone to now we have interactive smart cell phone technology. If you look at aviation, from the age of the Wright brothers to supersonic flight and automated flight currently. Transportation, from horse carriages to early Ford cars and soon self-driving cars. Note, horse carriages, not to faster cars, not to faster horses, but Ford cars. Music storage media, from vinyl to cassettes to CDs. I believe some of our young ones might be asking, what are vinyl and cassettes? There was something for MP3 and CDs. To cloud-based technologies, or cloud-based storage, that is. Navigation, from paper charts to GPS 10x10 navigation. So we see that this list of scientific achievements by humanity is very impressive. But what did we, Ghana, contribute to these technologies, or as they were progressing? What do we have to show? Where are the society-changing inventions, patents, and technologies? We have to think far. We have to think science, technology, and innovation. My second point, and the real step, is lack of progressive improvements to technologies. In addition to the new technologies developed, we are all beneficiaries and users of iterative nature of technological developments, such as the iPhone. You have iPhone 1 through 7. You have Windows 1 through 10. Boeing aircraft 737 through 787. In contrast, since we invented the Kumasi Ventilated Improvement Program, KVIP, in the late 1990s, have there been iterative progressive improvements? KVIP 2.0, KVIP 3, KVIP Lite, portable, mobile versions. I specifically chose this example because the first in a series of Achimota Speaks highlighted the problem of open defecation. Ironically, Ghanaians in over KNUST had indeed made inroads in the KVIP back in the 80s or 90s. And if this concept had been developed further, it could have theoretically ameliorated the problem of open defecation. Research is such that problems are not solved at a go. Solutions are a combination of progressive actions over time. Like a forest made up of trees, solutions are made up of individual contributions over time. The World Innovation Index 2016 version is a leading reference published by the World Intellectual Property Organization. Ghana had an innovation score of 26, and we were ranked 102, so 102 on the list of countries. To give you a context, Switzerland was the first, ranked number 1 with a score of 66. So 166 Ghana, 102, 26. Ghana was assessed as performing at our level of development, that is measured by GDP per capita. However, 6 sub-Saharan countries, who we will call our peers, were assessed as innovation achievers, outperforming their peers. These were Mozambique, Rwanda, Kenya, Madagascar, Malawi, and Uganda. This means we have work to do in terms of innovation. My third point under Orient is acceptance of the status quo. Acceptance of the status quo. As a nation, our motivation for innovation may differ from that of the more technologically advanced economies. Whereas their motivation could be merely curiosity, like Isaac Newton, economic aspiration, power, be it political, economic, or military. Our motivation should be different. Primarily, our motivation should be to enhance the quality of life and solve practical problems. Unfortunately, there is an inherent and systemic lack of root cause analysis into issues, which is the first step toward innovation from the problem-solving perspective. I'll use two examples here to elaborate further. Every year in January, the Harmattan leads to cancellation of flights in Ghana due to visibility. So Harmattan, either Kotoka or Tamale, and then flights are shut down. I've yet to hear of any discussion of this problem, let alone proposal of solutions. In contrast, similar issues of low visibility elsewhere have led to research and development of solutions. For example, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA of the US, recently published a new instrument approach regulation that will permit operators to use an enhanced flight vision system in lieu of natural vision to approach and land on the runway in low visibility conditions. So essentially, the pilots have a screen. It doesn't matter how dark it is outside. They can see the runway and all that, and then land in very low visibility. Second, I may not be too old, but for the entirety of my life, I have seen women carrying loads, water, and farm produce on their heads. Similarly, Kayaye have to carry heavy loads on their heads daily, leading to long-term effects that one can only imagine. In contrast, to prevent US soldiers from having to carry heavy loads, the Defense Research Projects Agency, DARPA, developed a robotic mule that can carry 400 pounds of cargo. The Legged Squad Support System, LS3, robot, as it is called, can also be trained to follow a specific person, similar to an actual trained mule or horse. It can also regain its balance if it accidentally stumbles over rough terrain. Wouldn't it be cool for a grandma in Wale Wale, who I did my national service, by the way, to have this robotic mule to carry her load back home after a hard day's work on the farm? There are several other areas where we continue to accept the status quo. Unacceptably low life expectancy for multiple reasons, low road safety with unacceptably high accidents and loss of life, lack of computerization and automation in several sectors of the economy, and lack of accurate, precise weather predictions, to name a few. If we are to rethink science, technology, and innovation for accelerated development, we must start by challenging the status quo and demanding change. This leads me to the third step of the OODA loop: observe, orient. We're now moving to decide. The third step of the OODA loop is the process of making, or the process of exploring and making choices among possible responses or available options for action. As a disclaimer for completeness, let me say that in decision-making theory, doing nothing is an option. But I humbly submit that we take that off the table. For our sense of national pride, doing something should be the only option. As the famous story of Dr. Kojabi goes, we are eagles and we belong to the skies. 90 years of Achimota School is a testimony that we can achieve whatever we set our minds to do as a people, particularly intellectually. Indeed, as the saying goes, as a man thinketh, so is he. I've summarized 3 areas here as decision options available to us. And the first is education. I'm well aware that the very last, immediate past, Achimota speaks also on education. We can decide to maintain the education system as is, or make adjustments to create a foundation that promotes innovation. In order to pursue the latter option, we need to cultivate a sense of curiosity, intelligent questioning, and critical analysis. As erroneously stated in the GES Primary 1 textbook last year, the head is not for carrying a load. A mind, as it is said, is a terrible thing to waste. We have to train and inspire our students to stretch their minds to the farthest limits possible. Often a real-world problem. Students formulate the problem, they investigate it, they acquire the skills needed to come up with a solution to the problem. It is no wonder Sweden is the second on the World Innovation Index. We also need to cultivate a strong, mutually beneficial ties between industry and academia. For example, co-located research parks which act as centers of incubation. My second point on the side is funding for R&D and technology initiatives. As the Bible says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I had a lot of my speech on football and funding the Black Stars, but I was advised to take it out. Both government and private partners should show how valuable science and technology is to them by making funds available for research. Encouragingly, public-private partnerships, PPPs, are working effectively in other sectors of the economy, and there's no reason why this model could not work for science and technology as well. Government has to show a strong commitment through its funding decisions reflected in the national budget. However, government alone cannot bear the cost and drive this initiative. To complement this, private organizations and businesses should also show commitment by funding strong R&D departments and efforts. Some of the greatest technological breakthroughs in the US were funded and driven by private individuals. Names like Vanderbilt, Henry Ford, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Westinghouse, JP Morgan come to mind. My hope is that future generations will look back and mention names of prominent Ghanaian financiers who led the drive for science and technology for accelerated development. Hopefully, that list will be loaded with Akoras. I would also like to mention the area of specialization. Most Ghanaians will agree that Kadye and Wani German. This is because the Germans have created the necessary attention to detail and created a brand within the niche of automobiles. Similarly, Scandinavian countries are associated with telecommunications. We have maybe India with IT, Cuba with healthcare and medical resources. Likewise, we need to identify and consciously promote development of a sector or sectors of focus for national emphasis. These are core priority domains that will promote the mobilization of resources and laser-focused efforts as a nation. With today's technology landscape, information technology is a sure bet. It's a sure bet candidate. Here I refer to high-end software development, support critical systems, and in aviation, communication systems, machine learning, and the Internet of Things. Naturally, food technology is another candidate, since agriculture is one of the foundational industries of our economy. Don't quote me on this. I'm not an expert in this area, but it will be interesting if you want to explore the bitters industry. Because every commercial I see, every billboard I see is about one bitters or another. If that's our calling, then let's go for it. Just as we have placed emphasis on agriculture since independence, we need to place an equal or even more aggressive emphasis on science and technology as well. Achimota School is a good example of how competing themes can coexist, since it was established on the principle or the premise that all the keys of the keyboard, both the black and white, can or are necessary. We should not look only to foreign donors for accelerated development. Science, technology, and innovation is a viable option. Yes, we know that the advanced economies are in a comfortable lead. But we have to make a choice and then act on our decision to catch up. This brings me to the final step of the UDALU, the act step. This is a step of implementation of selected options. As Professor Warren Soyinka said, a tiger does not shout its tigritude, it acts. So we have to act. We need to act on our decision choices. And here I have 3 recommendations as well. The first is on legal reform. It will be released in a talk such as this, not to bring up the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR. The CSIR Act 1996 at 521 lists some of the functions of the Council, including pursuing the implementation of government policies on scientific research and development, and also encouraging and promoting commercialization of research results. To put it generously, the Council has not fully achieved most of its intended functions. There's a rather high bar for such a body. To this end, it is necessary to take another look at the CSIR to see how it can be made to adapt to meet emerging challenges and emerging trends. Sectoral committees, it currently does not have a sectoral committee for information communication technology. That is very relevant in today's age. So we need to look at that act to revise it to be more appropriate to current challenges. Apart from the CSIR Act, we also need to look at laws to back funding for research and technology initiatives. This will demonstrate to businesses and investors and shareholders the value of investing in cutting-edge initiatives. Legislation initiating tax reliefs for funds spent on R&D and more easily enforceable intellectual property laws are 2 key reforms that will foster innovation. At this juncture, one may ask, what is the state of our patent office? What does it take to patent an idea, a scientific idea, in this environment? When one talks about intellectual property in this country, our attention typically moves to the literal arts or music. It's about Gamro or Sarkodie, or this person has stolen this guy's song, or one or the other. But in future, scientific IP should be at par in the very near future. Finally, I suggest the establishment of a position of a Chief Technology Officer at the Office of the President, backed by legislative instruments. No modern organization worth its salt can function without a CTO. In the US, an act of Congress signed by former President Obama on January 6, 2017, made the CTO position permanent. In doing so, the Congress recognized that in the 21st century, it is critical that the President has a technologist advising him or her on her policy decisions. I think this role is long overdue for Ghana as well. The role of a CTO will be to help the President and the government to harness the power of technology, data, and innovation for accelerated development. We also need a push by leadership. There are 2 triggers of innovation: the pull by consumers and then the push by government. For a technologically emerging economy such as ours, the onus is on the government to push innovation, similar to starting an engine and making it run on its own. I present one example here. Recently, on the 3rd of March 2017, Reuters revealed that South Africa is in talks with major aircraft manufacturers, Airbus and Boeing, to print 3D parts. This innovation, the first commercial application expected in 2019, is as a result of South African researchers working to develop the world's largest machine for producing aircraft parts using lasers to melt powdered titanium. It was a result of a public-private partnership. The Aerosuit Center played a key role and it was backed by the government through, you guessed it, South Africa's Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. So there are examples on the African continent that show that efforts like these, led by government, can bring about transformational changes in economies and societies. Others on our continent have shown that it is possible and it can work. At a minimum, it is my hope and expectation that the promises made in the 2016 NPP manifesto will be fulfilled. We also need to cultivate a culture of enthusiasm in science and technology. We need broad initiatives to whip up enthusiasm in science and technology in this country. Concepts such as a President's Science Day, where selected students and scientists visit the Flagstaff House and showcase their inventions, not to mention maybe mandatory field trips as well, will bring attention and recognition to science and technology. Media events throughout the world have also brought attention to science and technology. In Las Vegas, every January there's a consumer electronics show, and it draws huge international crowds and sets the agenda for gadgets that are upcoming in the world. Speaking of CES, what happened to our Indotech of old? We used to have Indotech at the trade fair sites, not to be found anymore. Scientific conferences, forums, and journals also go a long way. That is actually Dr. Nkrumah's goals in enactment of the National Academy of Arts and Sciences for interaction between scientists. In conclusion, and that ends the OODA loop, so that is the art step. In conclusion, I would like to quote from President John F. Kennedy in 1962 at Rice University. He said, and I quote, "We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win and the others too." Unquote. I believe this is the kind of spirit the founding fathers of Achimota had. This is the kind of spirit we should have as Akoras. And without wavering, this is the kind of spirit we should have as a nation. We have a lot of ground to cover, and time is not on our side. On January 7th, 2017, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo declared, and I quote, "Ghana is open for business." Unquote. If this is true, and it is true, I believe it is true, then science, technology, and innovation is the engine to drive this vision. Every sustainable civilization and economic revolution has been driven by science, technology, and innovation. My question, fellow Akoras and fellow Ghanaians, is are we willing to choose the hard road, willing to take up these challenges? By their actions, I know that the answer of some of our memorable Akoras would have been yes. Dr. Agbe would have said yes. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah would have said yes. Today, this humble Akora standing before you says yes. Come join me on this exciting and transformational journey of science, technology, and innovation for accelerated development. Thank you.
Keep the stars up in the room.